Number one reason why athletes stay slow is because they focus on predicting instead of ensuring. I did a survey on all the athletes trying to get faster. Out of my 130,000 followers on Instagram, and over 90% of them said that during their speed workouts, they focus on technique and feel during the workout. I'm going to give you a story about these two athletes who both started at 12.0 in the 100 meter and both ended in very different spots. The first athlete decided to train on his own, and he felt like the reason why he couldn't break 12 seconds in 100 meter and 5.2 seconds in the 40 yard was because his start technique was terrible. This is pretty common for most athletes, so what he started to do was he looked up YouTube videos on drills he can do to improve his start technique, and he started to do about 10 to 12 drills every single day as a warm-up, and he also started to record every single sprint he did and overanalyze every inch of his movements. He came to the conclusion that his start was the weakest portion of his race, like most athletes who are still underdeveloped, and he decided to hyper focus on the specifics of the start versus the general qualities that an athlete needs. Now he has the most on paper best technique in the world, but he cannot produce force into the ground because he spent too much time focusing on the technique instead of developing the athletic qualities it takes to actually have an explosive start. The second athlete was also running a 12.0 in the 100 meter and a 5.2 in the 40 yard, and he also had a very bad start. So he asked a good coach in his area, how do I get an explosive start? The coach told him that he needed to lift 1.5 times his body weight in the barbell split squat and the trap bar deadlift, and then once he got to that point, he needs to do band resisted sprints and jump variations. So since strength is so easy to build, in 6 months he got the strength he needed, and he started to do the variations and listen to everything the coach said. And after those 6 months of all that training, he ended up running 11.4 in the 100 meter and 4.7 in the 40 yard. And 2 years down the line, obviously progression slows down because people become more advanced in their training, and he ended up breaking 11 in the 100 meter and running 10.7 and going about 4.55 in the 40 yard dash. The other athlete trained for 6 months and went from 12.0 to 11.8 in the 100 meter and 5.2 to 5.0 in the 40 yard. And then after 2 years of consistent training, he only got down to 11.6 in the 100 meter and 4.8 in the 40 yard. The small technique changes he made at the beginning were good at the start, but long term he wasn't developing the athletic qualities he need to actually have an explosive start, so he was too focused on predicting versus ensuring his success by actually developing athletic qualities. Some speed coaches are famous for having perfect technique during every single sprint, and that's the only thing they focus on during every single speed session. And this is a little bit of an old school mentality, but pretty much the philosophy that they had is that if you perfect your technique, you will flat out be faster than your competition because you're producing force at prettier angles. To train correctly to get optimal speed and vertical jump gains, you need to be focusing on 20% technique work and 80% physical output work. When physical output is your main priority in all your training sessions, velocity management becomes a very important term that you need to understand. It's not a very complex, statement or anything. All you're doing is stopping your sprints and your jumps and your plyometric training once you reach a specific speed drop off. So if you naturally run a 1.10 in the 10 yard fly, you would stop doing 10 yard flies once you start running up probably around 1.21, so 1.21 in a 10 yard fly. Or if you ran a 40 yard, you ran 5.0. The second you start going 5.15 or 5.05, you're done doing sprints for the days. Obviously, you have adequate rest in between every single sprint or jump. Same thing with jumps. If you drop off 2 inches, you're done with your exercise. And remember, the 80 to 20% rule isn't only in one workout. It can be spread out throughout the weekly training, template. So if you're training 5 days a week, you can do 3 days a week where you're doing your time sprints, your resisted jumps, your resisted sprints, working on physical output, your compound lifts, your squats, your hinges, things of that nature. And then when you want to work on technique, you can do those on the off days with tempo sprints or movement quality work on like a Tuesday and Thursday, while the Monday, Wednesday, Friday are the physical output days, the compound lifts, all the things that really matter for developing an explosive raw output start. This is the most optimal way for most athletes to train, because if you do not have the structure to have perfect technique, you cannot force your way or brute force your way to have a blueprint technique if your body cannot have the structure or engine to actually hit those angles and produce force at those angles. Basically, if you have the best form in the world, it does not matter if you're still moving nowhere because you're not producing force down and back into the ground. You have to first develop the structure of the body, the output of the engine, and then fine tune the little details once you have the full complete athletic build of an athlete who can actually produce force. But if you're wondering what type of exercises do I need to do to actually develop my force production, or what is a program I can do to develop my force production, you can watch this video right here on my top 5 exercises to improve your force production. And then right here, you can hop on the Speed Academy or get a free workout in the description to transform your speed and vertical jump.